What's up, guys? I'm Greg Alba.
And I'm John Humphrey.
We're going to review Pet Sematary today, the latest adaptation from Stephen King. I guess I'm mediocrely excited to talk about this movie. Hey, before we go into this, why don't you guys go ahead and download and follow us on the Stardust app. Thank you to everyone who has done so thus far. Over there, we do 30-second reaction reviews for any film, TV show, or trailer. Sometimes we do micro sketches. If you want to get our opinion first before even our YouTube review is out, or for movies we don't even talk about on YouTube, it'd be cool if you followed us there, and you can post your own reactions reviews as well. So do that today. Anywho, on to Pet Sematary. This movie is an adaptation more so than anything else. I know there was a movie a couple decades ago or something like that, but I heard the directors did not really want to go approaching this as a remake. They wanted to just go to the source material, which I feel like is the smartest way to actually approach a second go around when you're adapting a book. And
that's why so many people say that when they're redoing a Stephen King.
Yeah, exactly. It's a common thing to say,
the
right?
way to go.
You know what? Just to make my life a lot easier, I'm just going to read the IMDb description. Dr. Lewis Creed, played by Jason Clarke, and his wife, Rachel, played by Amy Seimetz. That's a cool name. Relocate from Boston to rural Maine with their two young children. The couple soon discover a mysterious burial ground hidden deep in the woods near their home. To elaborate a little bit more, that burial ground, you bury something dead, it comes back to life, and it behaves like Stewie when he creates a clone of himself. Roll that clip.
Hey Stewie, how'd the clone turn out? Brian, I can't go to the bathroom by myself.
I like Stephen King.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, you know, there was actually like a surprising amount of hype going into this. I mean, today when we're filming this, the Rotten Tomatoes score is down to like 61% or something like that, right? Before we saw this, though, there was all this like Twitter blowing up about how Pet Sematary is this great horror film, and then Rotten Tomatoes score was even really, really high. We kind of went into this expecting something pretty cool. I think both of us, and actually people we talked to who we didn't even know were going to be there, when the movie was done, we were like, yeah, it's fine. It was good.
Yeah, and then that was kind of a weird reaction to have, just because I think that out of all the Stephen King stories that have been made into movies previously, this is one that could use an update, because while the original Pet Sematary does have parts that are still chilling and scary, there are also parts that are kind of dated and cheesy. And so I feel like this one, as opposed to A Shining or something else, does lend itself to a remake. So I went in actually pretty excited to see what would happen. And yeah, ultimately I came out with like it was pretty good.
Yeah. For me, I never read the book, and honestly, I'm not even sure I saw the other movie. I saw the trailer for it, and I was looking at the trailer going, I think I've seen this movie. I don't remember. So watching the film, this 2019 edition, there wasn't a single moment watching it where my mind would flash and go, oh, like in the original movie. That never happened for me. So I was able to just view this on its own merits without having any prior knowledge other than the two trailers that Paramount Pictures, I mean, they released more, but the two main trailers, the trailers kind of ruin a hell of a lot.
They do give away a lot of significant events.
Yes. We're going to take the reins to talk about things that the two main trailers that would play in the movie theaters, to talk about those plot points specifically. We won't talk about the ending, because that would be a major spoiler that they don't show in the trailer. And even though we feel the trailers do spoil a lot, Paramount Pictures released it. So yeah, we'll talk about it. If you have been like very anal about avoiding all trailers and you don't want to know anything, and you didn't see the original movie or whatever, or you didn't read the book, you might want to skip this non-spoiler review, because we're going off of what the trailers provided for us, okay? This movie kind of feels like two halves to me that were met halfway. All right. Yeah. The first half of this movie, you know, like the family's relocated, and they're trying to settle into the countryside of where they're living at. You got a husband, a wife, and a daughter, and like a baby boy, right? And they have a neighbor played by John Lithgow named Judd. So in the first half of this movie, you got a story that is dealing with a kind of a variety of things, but one of the elements is you got a creepy cat. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the second half of the story, which I'm pretty surprised that the trailer reveals.
I am and I'm not. I get why they did it, but also, yeah, it's a pretty blatant spoiler.
Because it happens like halfway through the movie, or maybe a little bit past halfway through the movie. The daughter dies, and then eventually they bring her back. using whatever supernatural abilities Pet Sematary offers. She comes back as a creepy evil girl. Okay.
Yeah.
You got these two halves, and I sort of feel like this movie could have really benefited from an additional 20 to 30 minutes. A lot of certain sequences and moments or just emotional effect could have really benefited off of having some real build to there or some better exploration into a lot of its elements. For example, with the daughter, this is just one example I'm going to give you guys. A lot of this movie has moments that I find creepy, moments that were scary, moments that make me go, whoa, but I didn't really find any scenes to make me feel that way. And nor did I find any scenes that really had me emotionally gripped.
Yeah.
And it's very apparent the movie is aiming for that in a lot of scenes. They're definitely aiming for that.
Well, because I think this movie really wants to be and borrows tonally from a lot of the more recent films that are about, people consumed with grief.
Yeah.
And the personification
Horror
of
movies
that
with
through
grief.
horror.
Yeah, Babadook, Hereditary.
Yeah,
it
things
seems
like
like it's
that.
trying to meet this halfway point of being more of like art house horror, like Hereditary and Babadook, and then being studio horror, like Stephen King's It. It seems like it's trying to blend both a little bit.
And not that the story doesn't lend itself to that. I mean, I know
it does.
Stephen King's books have those elements of very personal and very, mental exploration, basically. There are a lot of themes in those, and they pop up here, but I really did feel like, the film itself could have used just a different distribution of time and focus, or maybe, a little extra time, because the beginning especially and the finale, or the third act really, did feel kind of clipped. And I also felt like a lot of the dialogue was left to be very kind of on the nose for a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
In just a way where if they had added some extra flavor to it, it could have felt a lot more lived in.
Yeah, because it's like everything's doing its job technically. That's why it's like this really meets the fine good level. The potential for a lot of this to be great was always there. Yeah. And the example I wanted to bring up was with the daughter, because when she comes back to life, the biggest issue I had with that the way the whole thing plays out. I mean, there's some like pretty dumb choices that some characters make in this movie that I don't feel are well justified just because a character brings up that was a bad choice. But the whole thing with the cat is...
with the distribution of events and the way things build or don't necessarily, it doesn't help those moments feel any more human or any more, understandable.
Yeah, it's like if this movie had a tone that was a little bit more self-aware of what it was, kind of like how it did that, then it probably would have benefited in certain like forgiveness of some illogical choices.
Or if the dialogue had some more nuance in it.
Anyway, the point I've been spending 3 minutes trying to get to is with the daughter. When she comes back, it really could have benefited from some breathing room of the time when she's brought back to life. Instead of it going, she's definitely like an evil creep, like right away. It's like, she's an evil creep. I think it really could have benefited if Jason Clarke had this relationship with her where even if us as the audience knows she's going to be like a little twisted and fucked up, we know that, it really would have benefited the movie on the emotional journey if there was a couple of scenes or even one scene that they really let play out where Jason Clarke, you logically see him going, oh, maybe she's normal. Maybe she's fine. Maybe I successfully did this and it's okay.
Well, and because the movie chooses to follow him as the protagonist, and early on they establish him as a guy who does not believe in an afterlife. He is a very skeptic, logical person. He's a doctor of science. In a certain sense, is our avatar, and I feel like they really ought to have, convinced us by convincing him.
Exactly.
Because that would have been really important, because otherwise we're left to sit here going, dude, this is a terrible idea and you should have known.
Yeah. I think the acting in this movie is great. I think the acting in this movie is better than the writing of the dialogue. Like Jason Clarke is wonderful in the film. Amy Seimetz, who plays the wife / mother, who has a really traumatic past with her deceased sister Zelda, who suffered from a spinal condition. The kids are fine. John Lithgow, obviously he's gonna be great. He's John Lithgow. The actors are wonderful, but then I kind of see a different issue that sort of takes place where the real intriguing character here is the wife.
I really wish she was the lead.
Like, she had the interesting backstory. She had the setup for the arc. Her elements were definitely more of an interesting character than anyone else in this film. And if you're doing a second shot or remake, well, she's clearly the more interesting character.
What I truly, at least after having
we're just
seen
being
this
feminist. That's
on
all
the
it
first time.
We're just being progressive. That's the only thing.
I don't actually believe it.
We don't actually believe it. We're just trying to stand up for what's right.
Yeah, I think it would have been, I think it would have been cool to see her as the protagonist, or even see something where Jason Clarke starts as the protagonist and around the time he raises the daughter, it switches. Yeah. And gives us something a little more than, oh, this is just a really bad situation for everybody.
A lot of the moments that I feel like could have been effective should have been a little bit more layered with more specific internal conflicts. That requires like spoiler territory for a lot of things, like especially when the mom sees that her daughter's brought back to life. It just sort of becomes an instant like, no, this thing's evil. When I'm like, if your daughter is dead and she comes back to life, I feel like there should be some real conflict at present of like, holy shit, I've been missing you.
And I mean, I do like that scene, but ultimately, as a part of a greater whole that is the movie, I can't quite put my finger on it, but there is something in the focus this movie has, or what it chooses to put its weight on, that it doesn't really pay everything off for me.
And the other issue I really have with it is it feels like it wants to be deeper than what it is, but the movie's just not as clever as I feel like it needs to actually be. Sure, there's some creepy moments. Yeah. Is the acting good? Is the structure of the script fine? Yeah, absolutely. But the movie never got clever for me. It was rather predictable. It's sort of like, other than the final moments, I'm talking like the last like 2 minutes of this movie, like the last 2 minutes, everything was pretty much by the numbers and exactly how you expect all this to play out. It doesn't feel as deep or fleshed out as it could have been, because there's a lot of things set up with our characters. There's a lot of themes set up about faith with our characters that never really have a payoff. And there's this whole other storyline that deals with the death of this kid who's haunting Jason Clarke. Someone who's like, it's very early on in the movie with this death of this kid. And it's haunting Jason Clarke throughout the movie. It's never really quite explained the rules of the kid, of the ghost or whatever. It's never really, it gets kind of confusing when you look back on it, like, wait, what's the deal with this, with this character?
Rules and why is this character appearing to other people now? There's
no real payoffs or conclusions.
I'm sure there's something to that, but at least, again, my experience with this movie, it did seem a bit random and a bit like, wait, hold on, what? And even the stuff with Zelda, the sister, kind of feels grafted on.
When that could have been a great payoff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are set up for really good payoffs.
Yeah, and it's like you want them to unpack it, but you mostly just get the effect of it. You mostly get like, oh, this is traumatic. Okay, I get it, but let's unpack this.
It's like, I know that some people might hear that and go, wait a minute, you got a problem with the expositional dialogue, yet you're upset with not fully unpacking. And I'm like, well, that's the thing, though, is especially if in your first half, if you have so much expositional dialogue, you should definitely have a good payoff for a lot of these things and by the end of it.
And when the exposition is stuff like, they've just moved into their new house and are talking about why they just moved into their new house, and I'm like, I bet you guys already in real life would have had this talk.
There's a lot of those conversations in the beginning,
And so moments like that, you're like, I wish we'd chosen just a whole different palette of things to talk about here that could have developed the characters and helped this out.
So is there some cool cinematography? Sure. Are there some cool creep, like we said at the beginning, this movie's fine. It's better than a lot of horror movies that come out.
Solid remake. And a solid blockbuster remake.
I guess the reason why we complain about it is because you could feel that there's a great movie that could have been made here.
There's like a great cut of this movie.
As for someone who doesn't know the source material, who doesn't even remember the other movie, and just watching this, I couldn't help but watch so much of this movie and go, it could have been great.
It's so close.
But it's just fine.
I don't know why I'm not more affected by this. I don't know why I'm not as excited as a lot of people are. And I was really excited going into this movie because I thought that, especially seeing the trailer on the big screen, I thought it packed a lot of that menace, and I thought a lot of the menace kind of dissipated throughout the movie as, you've got this really thick second act. There's a lot of suspense sequences, and I've seen a lot of suspense sequences in a lot of movies lately, and go rent Starry Eyes, because if you want to see what these two dudes can do on like a punchy level, go watch that.
2.5, 3 stars out of 5 or something.
Like a 3, maybe 3.5 if I'm feeling generous.
Did you see Pet Sematary? Did you love it? What do you disagree with us about? What do you agree with us about? Leave it in the comments below and follow us on the Stardust app. You guys can also subscribe to the Reject Nation, click that notification bell, and we'll catch you guys soon.